everyone, this is Anna Alexander, and this is Dish About the Dish, where the foods we eat tell the stories of our lives. So a little bit ago, we spoke to author Asa Maria Bradley, and she shared that one of her favorite treats that she misses from her homeland of Sweden is the Prinsesstarta. And this is actually something I made many years ago. So when she sent pictures to add to her interview, she also included a recipe for this cake. And I thought, what better way to break in my new digs than to make this cake. Also, this is a new to me kitchen in a house that's almost 100 years old, and the layout is really kind of strange. So this is gonna be fun for all of us. So with the Prinsesstarta, there are actually 5 steps, 5 pieces to it. We've got the sponge layer, which is your cake. We have the pastry cream, jam, Chantilly cream, and then it goes with a marzipan top over that. So the easiest way to do this is just to break it down into steps. And this is something you can actually make ahead of time, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the pastry cream first, so that way it has time to chill, get set up, so when I put it on my cake, it doesn't ooze all over the top. So let's get started. So the recipe I am using is from the book Fika and Hygge. I think it's pronounced Hygge. I have to remember when I saw in Frozen how they pronounced it. By Bronte Aurell. But they also said that if there are pre-made portions of this cake you want to get and put it together, go ahead and do that as well. You don't have to make it entirely by scratch. But we're gonna do it mostly by scratch today. So for our pastry cream portion, we have your classic pastry cream, or also creme patisserie or creme pat. It's all the same thing. It's basically a cooked custard. So we have with us today our whole milk, our 1 egg plus an egg yolk, sugar, cornstarch, and some butter. So the funny thing is that this recipe is a European recipe, so you'll see it measured in grams, and you'll also see it called in the more European words. So instead of saying cornstarch, it's called cornflour. Instead of sugar, it's caster sugar, which just means the fine granulated sugar. The also funny thing is that it calls for butter, but it's not listed in the recipe where you put the butter in. So I'm going to treat it like when I make lemon curd and put it in at the very end when I strain this. So first thing we're going to do is put our whole milk into the pot. And this oven is strange. It goes from 0 to 1,000 in a nanosecond, so I wanna make sure I don't burn anything. This recipe also calls for a vanilla pod, and that's right, I shelled out the big bucks for a whole vanilla pod. That is because I'm going to feed this cake to people that I love very much. And so they're gonna get the whole vanilla pod. Now, if you do not want to spend the money on a pod, fine, that's okay. Go ahead, you can substitute in your vanilla extract. Yeah, just do it to taste, but don't feel like you have to show this out. So while my milk is coming to a boil, I'm going to mix together the cornstarch and the sugar in the bowl, get it ready to go. And as always, this recipe will be listed in the description below. Of course, you can always get the book as well. So my egg and sugar mixture is off to the side. My milk's coming to a boil. I'm going to split and get out the pods. I'm going to scrape out all this goodness. We're gonna put it in our milk. Now, as you start to source some of these ingredients, you realize how flippin' expensive everything is. So now that we've gotten all the seeds out of the pod, don't throw this away. This has still got a little bit of magic in it. You can put it inside some vodka, make some vanilla flavored vodka. Also, you make your own vanilla extract and put it inside your sugar, your just granulated sugar to make vanilla sugar. Even though it's empty, it still has value. And if you're going to spend the money to get a whole pod, use it up. So the Prinsesstarta actually started out being called the green cake. It was developed in the 1940s out of this book. I believe they said it was called The Home Economist. And the young princesses, there was 3 of them of Sweden at the time, were learning how to bake. They enjoyed it so much that this cake just was changed in honor of their name. So our cream is just about to boil. So that's where we're going to temper our eggs. Ooh, and that handle is hot. Tempering our eggs. So while we're whisking our eggs, because we want our eggs in motion, we're going to slowly stream in our scalding milk. And the reason we slowly do it is because we don't want scrambled eggs. You've heard that before. And then once you get your eggs nice and mixed up, then you put it back into our mixture. And this is when you're going to want to keep whisking. You don't want it stuck at the bottom. And it doesn't take very long for this to get nice and thick, and I will show you this here in just a moment. It took no time at all. Again, you don't want it to boil, you don't want it to scorch. Look how lovely and luscious this pastry cream has gotten, and I'm going to put it through the sifter. Even though I'm pretty sure I didn't have any scrambled eggs, I'm just gonna make sure. And this is when I make my lemon curd, I add my butter in there and let that heat melt it down and get it incorporated and nice and luscious. What's that word? Unctuous? That's one of my favorite words when they start talking about something nice and creamy. Actually, I think I did a pretty good job not scalding my eggs or turning them scrambled at all. This looks really good. And this smells like, it smells like a pastry shop. It smells like eggs and cream and vanilla. So good, so good. Look at how delicious that is. So here we have our finished pastry cream. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our cling wrap and we're gonna put it right over the top so it actually touches our cream like that. That way when this cools, you don't get that weird kind of film skin on the top of your cream like you sometimes will see on puddings. We don't want that. That's not a nice mouth texture. And we're going to chill this a couple of hours. In this case, we're going to do it overnight. Make this assembly really easy for you. So next up is our Chantilly Cream layer, which is so simple to make, they don't even include instructions for it in this recipe or list of ingredients. You'll just see 600 milliliters whipped cream. Now I call whipped cream and Chantilly cream 2 separate things because Chantilly has sugar in it. It's a sweetened whipped cream. And so if I see a recipe that just calls for whipped cream, I may or may not add sugar to it. So this one I'm gonna sweeten up just a little bit because this cake can tend to be on the sweet side anyway. But really simply, this is all we're going to do, is we just add our whole whipping cream, enough. We're gonna add enough. And then to that, we're going to add some sugar. Some people might add powdered sugar because it dissolves faster. I'm just gonna add a couple of teaspoons of our granulated sugar, and yes, I'm going to use a mixer with a whisk attachment because it's a whole lot faster than doing it by hand. Not even close. Now, because this is going to create kind of like a dome on top of our cake that's gonna hold the marzipan, we do want it kind of a firm peak, not soft. This is way too soft, but I don't want to whisk it to butter, because we don't want butter. So I'm gonna go a little bit further. This is also when I'm going to taste the cream. Make sure it's sweet enough, not too sweet. Maybe just a smidge more. That's good. A good medium peak. Now they said again, do it by hand so you don't whisk it. I say, just watch what you're doing. So here is our Chantilly cream all whipped together, ready to be refrigerated, so it's good for us to go tomorrow when we put together the rest of our Prinsesstarta. So our cream items have been chilling overnight in the refrigerator, and now it's time to start part 3 of our cake, which is the actual cake or sponge base itself. This recipe calls for a Genoise cake, which means that the leavener, or what makes it rise, is just air. And as you can see, there's very few ingredients. We have our 4 eggs, some sugar, flour, pinch of salt, vanilla extract, and some melted butter. And as you can see in our sugar, we have our friend the little vanilla pod from the other day, imparting some of its delicious vanilla flavor into our ingredients. So first thing we're going to do is beat our eggs with our sugar. And when I say beat, we're going to beat them. This is going to go for a good 4 to 5 minutes to get light and fluffy. Remember, this is an important stage because this is what's going to make our cake rise. This would be an excellent time to prepare your cake pans by lining them with parchment paper and cooking spray. So we're going to give it the ribbon test, which means if you drop it, it's supposed to make a little figure 8 with the egg and sugar mixture when it's ready to go, and it looks like it is. Get all of our ingredients in that bowl. We don't want to miss anything. Right, so here we have my already sifted flour, and I actually sifted this twice because this is going to be a delicate crumb. I wanted to make sure it was nice, no lumps whatsoever, and I don't want to smash what I've just created. So I'm going to fold ever so slightly my flour into my eggs, and you saw that I added my pinch of salt to the flour while this was mixing. Good rule of thumb, add your dry ingredients into your wet ingredients in thirds. Make sure we get to the bottom of the bowl when we do this. Okay. And before I get this all in there, I'm going to drizzle in my butter along the sides and get that incorporated as well. So again, this recipe also calls for 3 cakes. I only have 2 cake pans, so I'm going to fill one for like 1/3 and the other 2/3 in the other pan and just bake it longer and then slice it in half later. You got to do what you got to do. You might have seen some people when they make cakes want to knock the air out of it so there's no bubbles and drop it. Don't do that with this cake. Just give it a little bit of a shake. Now we're gonna put this into a 350-degree oven. Should be about 8 minutes for the smaller cake pan, probably almost twice as long, but I'm gonna check it, this one about 10, and see how it goes. In the oven. The recipe includes ingredients and instructions to make your own marzipan topping. Or you can go the really easy route and buy pre-made marzipan at the store and add some drops of green gel food coloring. You don't want to add water base because it will make your marzipan runny. And trust me, use the big electric mixer. Otherwise, knead that sucker by hand until fully combined. That could take you a while, but you will have a great arm workout. So now we're getting close to the time of assembly. We've got all 5 of our components now. We've got our pastry cream, our Chantilly cream, the cake sponge bake, the marzipan is all rolled out. That's gonna go over the top of our cake. And the 5th layer is the jam, which is the super easy thing to put together. Well, look at that, we're done. I am going to use my lovely springtime cake plate I rarely get a chance to use. And now we're going to do the assembly. So this was the cake that I had to double the size, if you remember, and I sliced it in half. So it's nice and dreamy. Did a pretty decent job. Gonna set that right in the center. First layer we're gonna put on is the jam layer. And they said the secret to this cake is a good ratio of filling to the sponge. Push it out to the edge there. This is a nice, dreamy, moist cake. Pastry cream. Look at all those lovely vanilla bean seeds in there. Oh, it's gonna be so good. The great thing about this cake is that you don't have to like ice it or do a crumb coat. Scary thing about this cake is the marzipan top. Ooh. Try not to slosh it. Ooh. We'll add our 3rd layer on top, and your hands may stick. So they do suggest moistening them so you don't rip the cake like I am. Ooh, that's sticky. And then this layer we're gonna top with our Chantilly cream after I wash my hands. Now this is the fussy layer because you want an ever so slight dome onto the top, but not too much of a dome, just a dainty dome. Now comes the tricky part, the marzipan. You have one shot at this, so go slow. Okay. Feels like you're getting ready for a prize fight. Okay. Okay. Okay, maybe it's centered. I think it's centered. Here we go. Whoa! I think if you wanted to, you could ice the sides with Chantilly. I have enough. I didn't think about it. That might have been a good idea. But now we're going to very carefully set this around without getting too many folds into it. And when you've got it mostly in place, decent enough top, I have my little fondant cutter. You can also use a pizza cutter and trim off your excess. Push those edges under. Oh. And we're almost done. Now, if you have excess, or they say use like modeling chocolate, you can make little leaves for decorations out of them. And if you have bigger chunks, and if you color this red, you can make little rose petals out of it. Roses. Off with a final dusting of our confectioner's sugar. And here we have our Princess Tarta. So as you can see, I kind of did add a little bit of red food coloring to make those roses pop. And now we're gonna slice into it. It's kind of like cutting through a tomato. You don't want to squash the skin there. Protection to it and pop out. And there is our slice. Oh, look how creamy that is. Ooh, that's so pretty. And there it is. That is our Prinsesstarta. So I have a little taste. And I think you could maybe have a little bit of Chantilly on the side, but again, that would make putting the marzipan on just a little bit more difficult. Ooh, it's sweet. But it's not too sweet because the jam kind of cuts right through that sweetness. Yeah, I definitely would not add more sugar to this. And then when you get to the marzipan, it's got a chewy, little bit of chewy, not quite gumminess to it, but it is a different mouth texture altogether. But it's rather delightful, especially if you had like a nice cup of tea, or maybe a Prosecco would also kind of cut through that sweetness. But it is beautiful, it is delightful, it is refreshing. And thank you so much to Asa for telling us all about it. And I hope you all give it a try. Tell me what you think in the descriptions and comments below, because I would so much love to hear from you. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because we want to see you again in the future. So until next time, y'all.